everyone, and welcome to this EduTech session on managing and securing your hybrid learning environment. My name is Megan Towns. I'm an education industry specialist on the education team here in Australia at Microsoft. And as we begin, I do want to acknowledge that our nation's story began at the dawn of time, and First Nations people always have and always will occupy and care for this continent. I want to acknowledge the Mulgoa people of the Darug Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I join you from today. I'd like to pay respect to past, present, and emerging elders of the Darug Nation and all the nations you're joining from today. And extend that respect to First Nations people present with us virtually and perhaps those watching later. The stories and knowledge shared by the First Nations people has always strengthened our collective learning experiences as a nation, and I hope that the stories and knowledge you experience at EduTech help strengthen us as a learning community. So, warami, hello to everyone attending this session. At Microsoft, we have a mission, and that mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And from the education sense, we see that as empowering every school, teacher, student, IT pro, and non-teaching staff member to achieve more through our technologies. And what we have seen over the past 18 months is a school may have had an amazing digital transformation plan set in place that was perhaps going to take place over the course of a period of time with, some scoping happening at the beginning of the year, a whole heap of other activities that are usually part of any sort of digital transformation taking place and starting to roll out that big plan, for example, Learn from Anywhere, after about, anywhere between 18 months, 2 years before you roll out that digital transformation. But what we've actually seen is that digital transformation had to happen very quickly. And Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, was quoted as saying that we saw 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months in that period last year in 2020, in the context of Australia, when we were in that remote learning period as a nation. Obviously, since then, we have seen a large number of schools have to move back to remote learning, sometimes only once, sometimes many times if you are based in Victoria. And so, the digital transformation has been very intermittent due to that disruption. But we're also seeing opportunities and this moment and opportunity to move beyond the squares on the screen and work towards a hybrid learning environment. So, no matter what happens, whether it be fire, flood, rain, pandemic, or, student injuring themselves and not being able to come to school, a hybrid learning approach means that students will be able to learn anywhere and teachers will be able to teach anywhere. So while remote learning was never, was necessary, it wasn't ideal, and we saw a drop in engagement. We saw educators both across K-12 and higher education and TAFE be concerned that their ability to deliver the engaging high value learning experiences they did in the classroom was not going to be possible in a remote learning environment. But we also saw that teachers acknowledged that the pandemic had accelerated that digital learning experience, and that students know, or the majority of students know, that digital learning will have a benefit on their education. And so at Microsoft, we're pretty passionate about creating this holistic experience that's going to provide greater value for hybrid learning, and acknowledging that hybrid learning is not just shifting between remote learning and at school learning, but a balance between the two. And the fact that you might have, the majority of your class physically present in a space, but you might also have a couple of students dialing in for whatever reason. Like I said, whether it's that they have a temporary illness or even a long-term illness, whether they're away on a holiday with their family overseas and want to continue the learning, whether they are impacted by a pandemic and are having to learn from home or learn from overseas if they're an international student. So Microsoft provides that platform moving forward to create this hybrid learning experience so that, it is a single unified platform for teaching, with Teams, obviously, hopefully, being that platform. Looking at, as well as all of our other education tools, looking at insights and apps to tailor the learning experience, looking at the device piece as well as professional learning, and then that foundation, which we'll probably focus most on today, of security, accessibility, and management to ensure that all the magic up the top here can happen. And, you know, this is where the IT pros, who I assume are most of you joining today to this session, are the most important people when it comes to managing that foundation for all the magic that will happen with hybrid learning. So to expand that out a little bit more, literally, the unified platform, like I said, does, you know, often start with Teams, but it is also important to integrate all of the rest of those and manage the identity and access for them as well, and the governance. Then with the insights and applications that can really tailor and improve the learning experience for hybrid learning, you know, we've got the insights already available in Teams as well as premium insights. Some of the stuff you can do with Azure Synapse and data lakes and bringing all your data together both in and out of the M365 platform can be really powerful and customized to suit your needs. And the always amazing Power Platform is where we're seeing a lot of both citizen development, but also you know, third-party development to really customize your platforms and your tools that you're using within a school. The device piece, you know, I probably used to talk about how the device comes last in a conversation around digital transformation, but I think what we have seen highlighted in the remote learning experience is that the device needs to be at the center, especially in a hybrid learning experience. You know, as a former teacher, I am very much aware that it's not always about being on the device all the time, even in remote learning and hybrid learning situations. But the device is very important when it comes to submitting work, you know, having conversations with teachers, with colleagues. That device really should be at the center. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. Also looking at professional development, you know, we have the Microsoft Educator Center, which is actually going to turn into Microsoft Learn very soon. Microsoft Learn is our platform for all things learning, and I'm excited to say that the Educator Center will merge into Microsoft Learn very soon. We also have a massive partner network to support you with training and deployment as well. And then, like I said just before, the foundation in which everything happens in that white area of the slide happens through security, accessibility, and your management. So we'll spend a fair bit of time in this session looking at that. So what I wanted to talk to today is, you know, managing and securing the hybrid learning environment. We've done lots of sessions on the Microsoft Education team around enabling hybrid learning as a teacher and how teachers can bring students along on a journey with hybrid learning and all of the learnings from the previous 18 months. This session is really about the IT pros of the school working with their teaching colleagues to make sure that what they envision as a hybrid learning model in the classroom, both virtual and physical, can come to life from a technical perspective. And so this session really looks at how IT pros can create and manage, not create, but how they can manage, you know, powerful portable devices for the hybrid learning experience. And what are the best sort of devices for hybrid learning? How they can then remote deploy those, but also deploy and manage them, but also deploy and manage the other tools associated with hybrid learning. And then finally, the importance of promoting and managing safety and protecting privacy and data, because, you know, in a hybrid world, we have people accessing devices that are either school owned or institution owned, or their own devices. They are mobile devices, they are laptops, they are PCs, they are a whole range of different devices, and we need to ensure that they can be protected and that the data of the school and the institution can be protected as well. So let's first look at powerful portable devices for hybrid learning. And as I talk through this section, have a think about these questions. You know, are you providing the most secure devices to your staff and students? Are you losing out on staff and student productivity because of the device choices that have been made? And perhaps that's something you can put on a roadmap for your digital transformation to change. Are the devices that are in the hands of your users providing the best experience for Microsoft 365 and or Teams? And what do inclusive meetings and lessons look like, both online, you know, a pure synchronous experience, but also in that hybrid experience with people joining in classroom and from home or from anywhere, quite frankly. And so I've started, you know, these are slides that I pulled together in the last week or so around the thought process that you go through as a school or an institution around your device, journey. Sorry, lost my words. And quite sometimes you'll choose both of these, depending on your environment, but more often than not, it is one or the other. But I do acknowledge that sometimes it's both. So, in the context of K-12, BYOD devices are almost always parent purchased, or they go down a managed device pathway where the school has purchased them in some way, shape, or form. And so, depending on which choice you make, again, there's another fork in the road. So with BYOD devices, it's about, do you go down a path of engaging one of our resellers? We have a heap of resellers across Australia that you can engage with that provide BYOD portals. That path is a little bit smoother, as you can see. Whereas if you're providing either specific guidance or, as a colleague of mine says, bring your own disaster guidance around, just going into retail and buying a device that you think might work. That's a little bit of a rockier road because you're relying on parents following either, like I said, your specific instructions or buying a device that's going to work in the classroom. So I think where possible, the smoother path is the path of least resistance. And that happens as well with your school-owned devices. There are lots of schools out there and institutions who have been managing their device deployment the same way for many, many, many years. And we now have what we call MDM, or actually it's probably industry calls MDM, around mobile or modern device management with a number of our tools around Autopilot, Endpoint, and Intune. And that can actually be a hands-off experience. You don't need to even touch the device when it comes into your school. You can simply either hand the box straight over to the student to unbox, or you can make it part of your rollout process. But ultimately, IT don't need to touch it. So again, that becomes a smoother road compared to some of the older processes of your, SOE image devices, which can take up a lot of time and sometimes money as well with your IT staff as students come and teachers come in with their devices to upgrade them, to image them. So yeah, I just thought those pathway analogies were quite nice. And regardless of whether you go down the path of BYOD or school managed devices or both, the device choice is important. Now, of course, working for Microsoft, I'm always going to talk to Surface first. We obviously have a large number of OEM partners who also build Windows-based devices, which are fantastic for learning. But I'll always talk to Surface first. It's probably where my love of Microsoft began, maybe after OneNote. I think OneNote was my first Microsoft love. And then I worked at a school where we rolled out Surfaces for teachers, good old Surface Pro 3s. And I really do think, both as a teacher and a person who was teaching teachers how to use those devices, it was just the best device for teaching, and I still think that to this day. So that's me banging on about Surface and its awesomeness. It really does, from a hybrid learning perspective, put the right device into your hands. It's got all the right technology built in so that you can deliver hybrid learning or participate in hybrid learning with built-in microphones, the always amazing Surface Pen, which is second to none, especially for your younger students who need to do that handwriting. So yeah, love the Surface range of devices. And then we also have Surface Hub. David Kellerman, who you can see on screen down here. Oops, that's not an arrow. David Kellerman's a university lecturer at UNSW and professor and for engineering. And he's been using a home setup for the past 18 months. Obviously, universities in Australia are a lot more hybrid than what our K-12 institutions have been. And he's been able to use that Surface Hub to deliver what is normally quite a practical subject. So if you're keen, check out the YouTube video. There's some great stuff there around what he's been doing. So yeah, it's a lovely choice if you are thinking about a hybrid teaching space for teachers, so that they can be quite dynamic in the way that they deliver hybrid learning, whether they be in the classroom or outside of the classroom. And then, like I said, we also have that broader Windows portfolio of devices, whether it be Dell, HP, Lenovo, all the usual suspects make amazing Windows devices that have, that are built for education. Have all day battery life. They are ruggedized devices, and a lot of them have that 1 meter drop test capability. You've got the near field mics and built-in pen as well. And I get asked lots of times about the best advice to buy for kids for education, for school, and it's always the device that you can afford. Yeah, like I said, I love that Surface Pro. But if that's a little bit out of your price range, or if it's out of your parents' price range in a BYOD scenario, then there are some great devices out there that are touch enabled, have a digital stylus, and have that 2-in-1 functionality, and they're really my top picks for your device options. So as I said earlier, the BYOD path and the managed BYOD path, or the BYOD portal path, is our recommended BYOD path. We have a massive BYOD market in Australia. We lead the world when it comes to parent purchase devices. So yeah, we have a number of partners that you can see on screen. I'll share all the links for all of this presentation at the very end. Probably should have mentioned that at the start. So yeah, these are our partners. Feel free to reach out to them. Some of them are based in specific states, but the majority of them do go national and have those BYOD portals, which we highly recommend. Definitely makes your life a lot easier. And they all work in with our modern mobile device management platforms as well, which I'll share shortly, as I said. So yeah, the benefits of having powerful portable Windows devices in the hands of your students and staff means that they, the out of the box accessibility tools are there and ready for children of all abilities. The built-in Windows capabilities for ease of access, the built-in Office capabilities for dictation and immersive reader are all just built in. There's nothing to add on from an IT perspective. You've also got the built-in safeguard from cyber threats built into Windows as well. They're built with multiple layers of security, from software to the cloud, to help keep teachers and students' data, devices, and identity secure at home or in the classroom. Windows Defender Smart Screen helps protect students from unsafe web content and downloads. And then things like Teams block unauthorized users with features like the student lobby and admin tools to set up the secure meetings and chats that you need for hybrid learning. And Azure Active Directory offers cloud-based tools to protect access and identities, as well as locking down the unsafe apps. And finally, Windows Defender Antivirus provides built-in threat protection that helps detect and block malware. So unlike other companies, Microsoft is absolutely committed to maintaining student privacy, no matter where they are when they are using our services and devices, whether they be school-owned or whether they be parent-purchased. And finally, it's all about delivering safe, high-quality learning at school and online. So all those Windows devices come, or not all of them, but the best Windows devices for learning are, in my opinion, the 2-in-1 devices, and come with the built-in high-quality audio and video out of the box, which is really beneficial for hybrid learning. So I want to show just a quick video about showing a school in action where this no-touch IT deployment exists. So without further ado, I will introduce the short video from St. Bede's up in the Newcastle area of New South Wales.
And so could everyone open up their OneNotes, and we're going to get started on today's lesson. At St. Bede's, we've got different ways of teaching. What we try to do is cater for the range of abilities in the classroom. Multiple teachers and multiple students in the same learning space, and that changes the dynamic of what our classrooms look like. But that means our technology has to work seamlessly. If you notice anything else, just chuck it up on Teams and reply to this post, and I'll try and work through it, or send me a chat. So we have a really robust orientation program here at St. Bede's. We teach them some of the core tools we use, like Microsoft Teams, how to use OneNote, how to use their stylus, Adobe Creative Cloud Suite, through to developing Microsoft Forms, working with Excel and other products within the Office 365 suite.
Daisy, how are you going with your project?
Yeah, good. We're just doing some brainstorming now.
We want students to leave St. Bede's being well equipped with the types of skills that they need to make the transition to the workplace. Skills such as problem solving, collaboration, completion of complex projects, and therefore the learning technology facilitates the development of those skills.
Because we've gone down the path of a bring your own specified device, what we knew was as soon as remote learning happened that we had the right tools in students' hands for them to continue with their learning. I had a device that had a video camera, that had a microphone, that was 2-in-1, that all the teachers could depend on. It meant that we were spending less time worrying about the technology and more time worrying about the learning that was occurring. I know that we had some lessons where some of our parents became experts in the classroom. There was certainly a lesson where we were talking about sustainable farming, and one of our parents, who runs a small farm, jumped onto the call and actually gave her feedback, which was wonderful, something we can't do in a traditional classroom environment.
I'm a visual arts teacher, and we've been really fortunate in that our students have become really savvy at using Teams in order to work on their assessment tasks and submit them. So I'm able to personalise that learning experience by checking in with students along the way, looking at their documents and where they're up to.
We use Microsoft Endpoint Manager, or what we call Intune. Last year, when I set up the brand new Windows 10 devices, I was able to run several classes where the students were empowered themselves to be able to install their own software.
Very easy to use.
It is. Don't tell everyone, otherwise I won't be in a job anymore.
So in the early stages, we had the students involved in scoping the project to select the devices for this year.
It was a bit of pressure because we were hoping everyone would enjoy it and kind of like it.
We narrowed it down to 3 choices. In years 7 and 9, we had lots of problems with battery running out before the day ended. So we looked at specifically at battery. We also looked at ruggedness.
Making sure that laptops do charge quickly if they do run out, so we can still keep on working.
Of course, they all run the Windows 10 environment, which makes it quite easy for us to maintain the system and know what's going on because it's much more secure.
It's just a good opportunity for us to have some input into what our learning will look like at our schools.
We can see lots of these students potentially moving on to university or TAFE or other activities and still continuing to use what is a really good high quality device to continue their learning outside of the school. Did I miss anything? I'm just trying to do head bingo.
All right, so that's a nice little video that I think really encapsulates that device at the center sort of story and the importance of having a device that meets the needs of students, staff, and also the IT pros, and as you saw there, being able to manage that device environment with as minimal touch as possible, but with the speed and efficiency of a modern device management program. So we'll look at that a little bit more a little bit later on. But what I did want to touch on before we leave the device piece is Teams rooms. So there's a lot of hardware out there now available for Teams rooms, and it's definitely something that schools are starting to put on their digital transformation sort of roadmap in the context of hybrid learning. We know that the pandemic will end one day, and we won't be in this constant state of flux, but schools are seeing it as an opportunity to update their physical learning spaces, both at home and at school, so that the physical spaces are set up for this hybrid learning experience and the future. So yeah, there's a whole heap of amazing back-end stuff through the Teams Admin Center that allows you to manage the hardware for Teams rooms. So that might be meeting rooms, it could be classrooms, and having those devices in that space. So we can see some speakers there, we can see a panel on the table, and we can see another camera there on the wall, as well as obviously the device showing the Teams meeting experience. And there's lots of different setups according to your different spaces. So definitely lots of universities are already walking down that path, but we're seeing more K-12 institutions start to consider what their rooms now might look like with Teams devices. It's also important to consider that home office setup. So, some schools are issuing their their teachers with, accompanied devices, whether it be, sound, microphones, headsets, and the like, as well as second monitors to connect with Teams. It's not unusual for me to be on my phone and on a device if I don't have a second monitor available to me. So, some basic Teams devices can support that home setup. There's also some great peripherals, USB peripherals, including webcams, that can provide some really rich audio and video experiences. And there's certain webcams that allow for a teacher to, whether this is at home or at school, have a whiteboard behind them, like a physical whiteboard, like they've been used to using their whole teaching lives. And the camera and the Teams technology, the Teams Rooms technology, actually makes the teacher transparent as they're writing on the board, so students can see everything on that board. So again, a really nice thing to consider as you go through your digital transformation with your learning spaces. And finally, that classroom setup, like I said before, and having different peripherals available around the room or integrated into the room. Some schools I know are starting to build a single, virtual, or not virtual classroom, a single Teams room or a classroom setup. And others are starting to plan how that might look in every single room across their school, obviously depending on budget. So yeah, the devices piece, we often think about that as laptops and PCs and tablets. But I think more and more now, as we contemplate a hybrid learning world, it's also about the Teams meeting room devices as well. So that's all I've got to say on devices. I seem to be somewhat on time at the moment, so I'll keep going. Remote deployment and simplified management. Like I said earlier, whether that's about devices or whether it's about other services, it is about modern ways of doing that and using the M365 tools available to you. A couple of questions for you to ponder on screen as we go through this section, around how do you manage your devices to actually support that hybrid learning experience, whether they're school-owned or not. Do you know where your sensitive data is residing and what sort of sensitive data you have in the school? How can you protect the information without negatively affecting your users? You don't want to lock it down so much that it can't be used, but you do want to you do want to protect it no matter where that data ends up. And have you got policies to retain and delete the sensitive data that exists in your school? So let's have a look at the transition that you might take to modern management. So traditionally, we've seen the reality is we're, still living in a world that has a lot of traditional IT practices, and there's a real tension there because IT departments have built themselves around a traditional PC lifecycle, managing images and controlling updates and locking down behavior, protecting users, but IT does need to evolve and adapt. And so, we don't think this should be, an either or. We don't think it should be an either or. Our approach is to allow you to do both and to modernize it at your own pace. So you might move certain, workloads to a modern IT approach over time. And manage that risk in a smart way. So to take advantage of the cloud and modern IT, but also give you the tools and capabilities to bring that design point to your existing investments. So you aren't throwing, baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. So for us, Microsoft 365 powered devices have some important core characteristics, and they are designed with built-in intelligence and security. They're easy to deploy and manage. They're always up to date, and they support and produce proactive insights. From the perspective of Microsoft 365 powered device, and more specifically Windows 10, there are a few key technologies that we want to point out. First of all, Windows 10 with its key security and productivity functionality, Microsoft 365 apps that are always up to date, with always up to date productivity suite and evolving as the consumer versions of our 365 apps are updated. Cloud-based services such as Windows Autopilot, the Microsoft Store for education, Microsoft Intune, and Azure Active Directory, which all work together to make it easy to deploy and manage those devices. So, additionally, there's technologies such as Azure AD Connect and School Data Sync that assist with synchronizing your users and roster data from a student information system to provide institution-wide adoption and integration easier, both for devices and platform. But before diving into each of those topics, I want to just sort of step back and ground us all on, why we're here, and that's to achieve better outcomes for your students. So you might work in IT, but everything you do impacts the way that students and teachers work. So we're working really hard to develop technology solutions that support your goals, that in turn support teachers. And so there might be misconceptions about what Microsoft can do for students in education because, 3 to 5 years ago, things were different. We've done a lot of learning and change since. Strategically, our CEO, Satya Nadella, about 6 years ago, committed heavily in education, and now we're seeing tremendous momentum with our education platform. Better learning outcomes, saving teachers time, and providing options for affordable devices is at the core of what we do in our education teams across the globe. So let's take a look at that, student experience, and when they have an M36 powered device, and how our solutions can be your answer. So Autopilot, we recommend that education organizations first consider cloud-driven Windows Autopilot mechanism. So new devices don't need to be touched by any IT staff. It makes your life so much easier. They can be sent directly to the end user, saving lots of time and effort. And the end user doesn't need to do anything beyond just putting in their email address and password to authenticate that they belong to that school or that institution. The rest of the process is completely automated. As the IT pro in that video mentioned, don't tell anyone, you might be out of a job. It's also possible to tie that into your overall supply chain with Autopilot. So when devices are ordered from an OEM, from a reseller or a distributor, they can automatically be associated with your organization. And maybe, depending on who you're working with, even be drop shipped directly to the end user, which can be very helpful in remote learning times. So to make this work, there's a few key technologies being used. Windows Autopilot Deployment Service, which knows about the devices that belong to the organization. Azure Active Directory, which authenticates the user and drives the MDM enrollment process. And finally, Microsoft Intune, which completes the configuration of the device and ensures that it's properly managed once the setup is complete. Now, I would not consider myself a technical person. I'm definitely building my technical skills more and more. What I really like to do is sort of connect the teaching with the IT. And so I love to get my hands dirty with some of the IT that schools use. And I've been managing my suite set of Surface devices via Autopilot, Azure Active Directory, and Intune for the past few years. And it is really simple. I love being able to deploy those apps for my workshops, and it's been a really easy process. So what do you need to do to use Autopilot? There's 3 steps. First, each new device needs to be registered with the Windows Autopilot Deployment Service. Then a profile of settings needs to be assigned to each device, controlling how the device is configured prior to when the MDM service can complete the setup. And once those steps are done, the device can then be shipped to the user. And so you can work, as I said, with those resellers, distributors, and OEMs that you might be or you are probably already working with at your school. Ask them about Autopilot and how it can help with your device deployment and management. So we've done a bunch of work in the past to focus on getting the IT experience converged with one entry point for managing your environment, which is the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And the Admin Center has just a few specialist centers, and we're not adding to that list because we want to keep this as focused as possible. But one of the specialist centers is the Endpoint Management Center. And so this is the Admin Center where you see how things show up from Config Manager and Intune. So we've got a bunch of paths to achieve modern management, whether it's through, like I said, Intune or Config Manager. So that's why we've introduced this, Endpoint Manager. The idea behind Endpoint Manager is we give you one administrative surface to bring together the value that Microsoft Intune brings and the value that Config Manager brings, and our other endpoint management tools such as Autopilot. So Intune will play the role of providing the cloud infrastructure, and Config Manager is the intelligent edge of that solution. And finally, we bring more and more of the cloud values and promises through analytics and through Endpoint Manager Analytics and Autopilot and the cloud intelligence to the environment that you've got. So yeah, Endpoint Manager. I forgot to build that out as I was talking. Intune for education becomes an important part of that conversation as well. So we get feedback that customers love the richness of Endpoint Manager and how it can manage Windows as a mobile device in addition to other platforms. And looking at Endpoint Manager it is today, it's rich in functionality. The interface, while it's appreciated by large commercial customers and IT pros, it's not necessarily needed for the smaller IT operations or an individual educator serving as an IT person. So we've spent a lot of time partnering with schools to identify the management workflows that matter the most to them and created Intune for Education. So we're taking that same product and put a streamlined dashboard on top of it for education. From an all-up view of both tools, we support multiple platforms, including Windows, iOS, macOS, and Android, and we've made it super easy to deploy and manage Windows and Office 365 apps. So delegated administration is built in so that scoped admins can only perform administrative tasks on a set of devices and workloads in Intune, for example, class sets. And we've built a lot of tools and features to help transition customers from on-premise experiences to the cloud. So one thing I want to make extra clear is that whatever change is made in either environment will reflect in both environments. So Intune for Education is built on the same backend as Intune. So basically it's just a streamlined skin that's trimmed away lots of all those enterprise focused workloads, and the large customers, we commonly see the central IT staff using Intune, while the local school techs would be using Intune for Education, and what happens to one happens to the other. So nothing stops the local school techs from using the larger console, but most tasks can be easily achieved with Intune for Education, and they like that streamlined aspect of it. So let's run through a quick overview of what Intune for Education is. So some areas that we've tailored to the console for Edu. We have zero touch management, so it's simplified to configure a device by remotely configuring your apps and settings and having it all come down through the cloud without needing to touch the device. For schools that have a lot of shared device needs, you can configure different settings and applications targeted to user groups, so that to users and user groups, so that each user has their own tailored experience using the same device. So you could have settings applied to infants age students with perhaps cameras turned off and connected to specific printers in the infants block, but if a student logs into the device who's in year 4, for example, they would have the primary settings applied when they sign into the same device. Then they would print to printers in the primary block, and perhaps they have some more settings enabled, for example, cameras. They have different apps depending on what grade they're in as well. So it really does allow you to customize the experience even on shared devices. So another important scenario is around configuring secure assessments, especially when it comes to end of year. So Intune for Education has a simple flow to configure a dedicated testing account that locks down windows for assessments. It's called Take a Test. So when it comes to delegated administration, which is important for schools who have layers of IT teams, we've also streamlined the process of configuring roles and permissions needed to achieve delegated administration. So great for those bigger IT teams. And finally, we're going to get deeper into this topic, but you can easily bring devices into management by using a USB key or Autopilot. So I just wanted to, might move on just in the interest of time. Just wanted to move into Teams and managing and deploying your Microsoft Teams environment. So, Teams is amazing. I've been talking about it for the best part of 3 or 4 years and a lot in the last 18 months. You've got the ability to bring in your applications, your traditional Microsoft applications, third-party applications, and there's a lot of education-based ones, custom applications as well that you may have built yourself, or you've engaged a third party to build. So whether that's using low no-code stuff through the Power Platform, whether it's using some of the app templates, which are also low or no code, or whether it is either building something from scratch yourselves or engaging a partner, like I said, it is this absolutely amazing platform that is a scaffold for all school operations and really customizable. We've seen lots of teachers use the class Teams experience to provide that unified learning platform for both remote learning and hybrid learning once they come back to school. The meetings that are integrated into Teams means it's just one tool for your synchronous calls as well as your platform for learning and assignments and the like. Collaboration is simple using Office Online or even the Office desktop applications for your Teams files. We have lots of well-being and engagement built into Teams. And we also meet you where you're at in regards to your LMS. So if you choose to use Teams for collaboration, but you're using your LMS for learning content and another tool for standalone meetings, not a problem. If you're using Teams for collaboration in your learning spaces and then another tool for standalone meetings, not a problem. We often have integrations that connect all of these together. Likewise, you might be using Teams for collaboration in your online meetings, but a standalone LMS, and that works side by side. Or, alternatively, you might want to bring everything together in the Teams space. Completely up to you. For your Teams and LMS better together story, we are working more and more with LMSs, or LMSs are working more and more with us to create deeper integrations, and there's a lot of changes rolling out in the coming months, or they've already landed. The insights in Microsoft Teams are definitely powerful in the context of hybrid learning and being able to, see what work students are doing and how they're engaging with learning, whether you're physically present with them or not. And it's it's a great platform for delivering hybrid learning, for being the source of truth for all learning in your school, side by side or separate to an LMS, completely up to your school. But it's also that space for staff to come together and collaborate as well. So it's a single pane of glass in which digital operations can take place in your school. Now, if you're at the beginning of your Teams journey, we highly recommend our partners across Australia to get started with Teams. But we do have some simple guidance as well if you're either a beginning or along the way in your Teams journey for digital transformation. So first up, some assumptions. We always assume, or not, we don't always assume, but the best Teams environment is set up when you have Exchange Online turned on and you're using School Data Sync. If you're not, that's okay, but you'll have some technical challenges along the way and have to do some workarounds. So wherever possible, move your users to Exchange Online for email and use School Data Sync. School Data Sync is a completely free service in Office 365 for education. It creates Office 365 groups for Exchange Online and SharePoint Online, class teams for Microsoft Teams, OneNote class notebooks, groups for Intune for education, and rostering and SSO integration for many other third-party applications. It is a great way to save your time and your other IT pros time. So the idea is that the student information system has all this information on your students and teachers and class rosters and school rosters. Connecting it to using School Data Sync means that it can populate all of those things that I just mentioned. And that could be automated. So when your school information system updates, especially at the beginning of the year when class changes are happening, it will automatically, through that SDS process, update all of the other, all of the memberships where a student or even a teacher is a member. So if you're keen to learn more about School Data Sync, we do have an interactive guide. Like I said, I'll share links to this entire presentation at the end. But yeah, School Data Sync will 100% improve your ability to manage and deploy technology across your school. So with Microsoft Teams specifically, there are some common concerns that we encounter. People, there's concerns of people who create too many teams. There'll be intellectual property lost or escape the school. Guests will have access to things they shouldn't. People won't be able to access the things they need, and performance might suffer due to, too many teams and sites. You've got the ability to control teams and allay any and all of these concerns so that the Teams experience meets the needs of your school, your users, your policies, and even your state and federal laws. So a new feature that has come along in the last 6 months or so, I think, is an education policy wizard built into your Teams admin portal. So if you're new to using Teams or you haven't yet set up your Teams environment or managed or the governance for your Teams environment, the Teams for Education policy wizard might be something you look at. You can either choose primary or secondary or higher education, and policies will be applied that we have found in working with hundreds of thousands of education customers across the globe are the best set of policies to apply for those two scenarios. Of course, you can change and update and edit those once you've set it up. But yeah, if you just want an out-of-the-box wizard-based solution, check out that Teams for Education policy wizard. But let's just have a quick chat to a certain extent about governance in Teams and how you can streamline the deployment specifically of Teams, how you can help keep your system secure and compliant, and how you can ensure the best return on your investment. And that's through governance and looking at the global settings that you have, your specific configuration for users, and a team's life cycle. And you do that through 3 phases of the team's life cycle. So there's the initial phase where you have your team set up and setting up dynamic membership and guest access and all those sorts of things. You have that active phase where your users are in there and using Teams. You need to be looking at the management of those teams and all the different policies that can be applied, as well as some of the reporting and roles within Teams. And then finally, considerations for that Teams life cycle of what the sunset phase is. What sort of archiving policies are you going to implement based on whether it's your own school's policies, whether it's, sensitive data that needs to be stored on students for a certain number of years. All of those policies can be applied as part of looking at the sunset phase of your team's life cycle. So you can control who creates teams via security group membership, and it's commonly used in K-12, where there's a requirement to prevent students from creating teams. However, I'd strongly caution against that in higher education. There's many reasons why your organization would want to invest in and deploy Microsoft Teams. The biggest threat to that investment is users, whether they're, staff or students. So, not having the ability to create teams for the specific purpose or culture. So, disabling the ability to create a team within the application isn't usually enough for a user to go to other tools that don't have the provisioning friction and thus, take the conversations and content to a provider that's out of your control. So even if you have the simplest IT driving provisioning process, it's still on the user to discover what your process is and initiate the process. So if you want to enforce specific Teams policies, we've got the ability to do that with a number of other IT controls. So you'll see a different experience depending on the policies you've set up. If you're a student and you if you're a user who has permission to create a group, when you click on that join or create a team, you will see create a team. If not, you won't see that box at all because that policy has been applied. So yeah, that's our recommendation that K-12 absolutely evaluate whether all students. Sometimes we allow some schools allow year 11 and 12 to create. Others, block it down completely. All right, just might move along just for time. Figuring those user experience policies. The policies that can be applied are around, team creation, meetings, messaging, live events, app permission, app settings, and calling. There are a lot of policies in there. As I said, if you use that wizard setup, then they'll be applied for you and you can come in and then manage those accordingly, or you can add new ones. From a recommendations perspective, we actually have a link to keeping students safe while using Teams for distance learning, which is going to be helpful for both hybrid and standard learning as well. But these are the recommended ones. And if you go onto our docs.microsoft.com page, you will find the links to all of these. But there's reasons why you would have certain things on or off for students or educators. And the majority of these are set using that education wizard policy in Teams. So highly recommend you check out those links after the fact if you're looking to deploy Teams. And our final pillar is to promote safety and protect privacy and data, whether your students and staff are at home or at school. That will allow you to really manage your hybrid learning environment. So a couple of things is to ponder as we wrap up this session. Are you taking a zero trust approach? How many vendors have you got? Count them up. How many do you want to have? It's probably a lot less than what you have. And what are you most worried about when it comes to security? If you reach out to your LSP, your licensing provider, you will be able to have a discussion with them about the benefits of your A5 licensing and the wealth of security and compliance features that are available to you in A5. You can also get them as standalone step-ups, but we do recommend, if you want to combine all your powers together, that the A5 licensing can really be that solution. Plus, you get the added benefits of Teams voice and analytics. And that security piece is really important. The education industry is under threat more than any other industry, more than government, more than finance. As you can see, that graphic is quite comprehensive in highlighting that the education industry is threatened more than any other. And we've seen that during COVID times, especially. Threat actors have capitalized on the disruption caused by the COVID-19 crisis to expand their attacks. The number of threats have grown dramatically. We're now analyzing over 8 trillion threat signals every single day. And as we look ahead to post-pandemic life, not only is the way we work and learn and teach not going to probably return to pre-pandemic norms, that threat landscape isn't going to return back there either. It's going to continue to evolve. So we're deeply committed to offering solutions that allow you to protect everything, basically safeguard your school or university with integrated security, compliance, and identity solutions built to work across platforms and cloud environments. We believe that anything less than comprehensive security is no security at all. We secure devices, identities, apps, clouds, the fundamental fabric that is a school operation, with the full scale of our comprehensive multi-cloud, multi-platform solutions. We simplify the complex. So see the entire picture, prioritize the right risks, and remediate entire attack chains with a fully integrated toolset and strategic guidance created to maximize the human expertise inside your institution. And also catch what others miss. Leading AI automation and expertise can help you to detect threats quickly, respond effectively, and fortify your security posture. Because you can't stop what you can't see, we have a unique outside in and inside out approach that helps you scale faster. And finally, grow your future. With the peace of mind that comes with a comprehensive security solution, you're free to grow, create, and innovate your school, university, or TAFE. We believe security should enable you to go further, faster, and as we innovate products across all markets and technologies that Microsoft's a part of, we're fairly uniquely positioned to meet the security needs of the future. So we know just how mission critical this work is, especially in education, and we really do want to be your allies on this journey. So in today's environment, with the disappearance of all the usual sort of school perimeters in this hybrid learning world, zero trust is no longer an option. It's a necessity. It's the #1 topic of interest amongst all the security decision makers that we've surveyed in many surveys at Microsoft. We believe zero trust is an extremely effective approach to comprehensive protection. But even if you use a different framework for your security strategy, the key principles behind zero trust are relevant for everyone. Move from assumption to explicit verification. Adopt a policy-based least privileged access model, and design with the principle that every element of your system can be breached. A holistic approach to zero trust should extend throughout the entire digital estate. It serves as an integrated security philosophy and an end-to-end strategy. So you can do this by implementing zero trust controls and technologies across 6 foundational elements of identities, devices, data, apps, infrastructure, and network. We believe, that every school, university, TAFE, and college should embrace those principles of zero trust. So we've built them into the hearts of all of our products and services. A strong security posture is one that focuses on resilience. That means looking at security in a holistic way, from identity and access management through endpoint, email, application security to cloud security, SIEM, data loss prevention, and regulation compliance. So protecting each of those elements is simply not enough anymore. It also is important to extend protection to your entire ecosystem across all platforms and all the clouds that you might be accessing as part of your hybrid solution. So at Microsoft, like we said, anything less than comprehensive security is no security at all. So that's why we've designed our security solution to be fully integrated across 50 different categories with security, compliance, identity, and management as an independent whole. Not only does it deliver that end-to-end protection, but it's also more cost-effective than a lot of other vendors. We've estimated a cost saving of up to 60% on licensing when you streamline your security operation on a our integrated security platform. Varies from license to license, but on average, and additional cost saving could also potentially be realized from different deployments and integration. Oh, forgot about that one. Also important to note that we've been recognized by Gartner as a leader in 5 of the Magic Quadrants. Magic, got my wand ready. So access management, cloud access security, broker, endpoint platform, protection, enterprise information archiving, and unified endpoint management tools. Additionally, Forrester have also recognized us as a leader in their Forrester Wave reports. So, we are leading the way when it comes to security across platforms. So that's been a whirlwind tour, a whirlwind exploration of how Microsoft and the tools and services that you have available through Microsoft 365 licensing can provide the hybrid learning environment you need, whether students are or staff are on site or at home or a combination of both. It is this holistic experience where that foundation is extremely important, and having that strong foundation allows for all of the rest of the hybrid learning experience to take place. So hopefully that's given you a sense of Microsoft 365 as a platform and how it can be the platform for hybrid learning, but how you can manage and secure that environment for hybrid learning as well. There are lots of resources to share. I will share a link on our absolute final slide here, specifically around hybrid learning. I've shared some links in there. Then the usual suspects for resources that you can access. The Microsoft 365 documentation, specifically for education, is available to IT pros. In there, you'll see all sorts of guidance around cloud deployment, device management, and app management, as well as the usual deployment, security and compliance and analytics and insights as well. Great documentation there and pretty awesome search as well. For your teachers who are using the technologies, feel free to share that Educator Center with them. As I said earlier, it is going to merge into Learn later in the year, but for now that Microsoft Educator Center provides, I think, around 180 free online courses. They just have to drop down training up the top there to access those courses. Great way to complement all the hard work you're doing in the back end with the front end user training. My favorite link is this last one, aka.ms/onestop.edu. For all of the tools that you are managing and deploying, we have a page for teachers that allows them to learn about how they can use it in their classrooms, and some great videos and step-by-step guides as well. So that's probably my favorite link to be sharing at the moment. And to wrap things up, love this quote from Satya Nadella, where he says that, he always says to students who want to join our intern program, looking to, if you want to be cool, go and look someplace else. But if you want to join a company that is committed to making others cool, join Microsoft. And that's what we are about at Microsoft, helping our schools, universities, TAFEs and colleges to look cool, to be the best that they can be in this hybrid learning world. So stay cool, and hopefully that's given you a nice sense of what is possible with Microsoft 365 platform and hybrid learning. Thanks everyone. There's the link to all of the slides. Just head to bit.ly/hybrid learning edutech and you'll have all the slides from today's session. Thank you very much and have an amazing edutech.